Some of the folks have just joined us for the afternoon session for today's 2024 Diversity in Leadership Conference. So we're excited to kick off the second part of the program and talk about a dynamic duo. I'd like to invite Colin Diaz up to the stage, who you know already is our president and CEO of the Tempe Chamber. So many of you know these two women. We've got their pictures up here, here in Arizona, bringing sports to new heights, driving our economy, giving back to our community. Let's introduce these two powerhouse women. Latasha Causey here is the president of NASCAR's Phoenix Raceway. She oversees the promotion and operation of their modernized facility, a top motorsports and entertainment destination. She is the first African-American female to hold this role in NASCAR history. Please help me welcome to the stage Latasha. Come on up. I cannot wait for you guys to hear some of their backstories today. And Jay Parry, you know this face. Jay is B of A, WNBA, NBA, Super Bowl, Final Four. She is the president and CEO of 2024's NCAA Men's Final Four Host Committee and the 2023 Super Bowl committees. An accomplished business executive and servant leader with a true passion for sports and an even bigger passion for giving. She's the driving force behind major sporting events, including, yes, the Super Bowl, leading professional sports franchises, the Mercury, the Sun. She's remained equally committed to uplifting our underserved Valley community. So help me again to welcome Jay Parry.
Well, thank you, Latasha. Thank you, Jay, for joining us. We heard very briefly of your accolades for both of you, and I'll start with you, Latasha. Can you tell us a little bit about what's led to your journey of where you're at today, and then also how do you view effective leadership?
Absolutely. Well, first, Colin, thank you so much for having us. It's always great to be on a panel with Jay, so it's great to be here with all of you. Honestly, I will say I did not have on my bucket list or my to-do list to be the president of Phoenix Raceway or to work for NASCAR. Was not on the list of things to do, but I am extremely grateful and humbled by the opportunity. This is my first go-round in sports. I've been in the role for a year and a half. While I've been a long-time business leader here in this market and in this community, I am a Phoenix native. Do we have any Phoenix natives in here? Yes, shout out to the 5 of us, right? So born and raised here in Arizona and have really had the opportunity, great ability to work for amazing organizations. And by my network, I received the phone call to take on this role at the Raceway and to be, if you will, a history maker. And it wasn't an immediate yes. I had to do a lot of digging and research on NASCAR because you ask about effective leadership. I'll be really honest, very transparent. I did not want to get hired for NASCAR to be a token. Like, you're not going to hire me to be the face of NASCAR, be the face of Phoenix Raceway because I'm black. You will hire me because of my skill, and I'm grateful that that is what NASCAR did for me. So, thank you. Thank you.
And I definitely want to dive a little bit deeper on that, but Jay, same question. What would you say has led to the myriad of things you've been able to do to impact the Valley, and what does effective leadership look like for you?
Sure, thanks. Well, I'm super happy to be in this room with you all. When we walked in a few minutes ago, there was just great energy and excitement, and so congratulations on a great event for bringing everybody together, because we love talking about sports and business. And we love talking about it with this kind of filter of how are we inclusive and how can we be more inclusive in Arizona. We want it to be one of our hallmarks. So, I started out in corporate America at Bank of America and had a great career and I think got a great foundation for business. And then I wanted to do something more entrepreneurial, and that's when I was invited to join the Phoenix Mercury. And I too, like Latasha, have had a serendipitous career path. Never a plan. It's okay to admit that, right? No plan. And so it all came about, whether it was the Mercury or it was the Suns or it was the Super Bowl, it was the Final Four, all of that was also relationship based. So it was based on folks that I had worked with, I'd networked with, I'd known in the Valley, and so I too got that call to say, hey, do you want to come and be the president of the Phoenix Mercury? And I thought long and hard about it. Looking back on it, why did I take so much time to think about it? It was just a great, great opportunity for me. And it just led to really being able to be here in Arizona and showcase what a phenomenal place this is. And I get really excited about that. And there's no better way to do it than sports.
All right. Well, I've shared this with both of you before. My background many years ago was in sports, and I think if I could do anything for free, or if I was getting paid and I could do anything, it'd be sports related. So a little envious there, but I love what I do. But the question about barriers, because you guys have both, you're in roles that maybe traditionally folks that have been in the role before, either by background, experience, look, feel, whatever you want to call it, you've definitely have broken barriers. So I'll start with you on this one, Jay. What can you speak to, being predominantly in a male-dominated industry, how did you go about breaking barriers? What does that look like to you today? Is it something you'd see as a destination, or is it ongoing?
Yeah, such a great question. So, certainly whether I was in the conference room or the boardroom, there were mostly men, in those rooms with me. And frankly, I didn't really think a lot about it. And the way I approached it was, really basic things like be very prepared and then try to over-deliver and always contribute more, as much as you can. And so really it was about performance. It was about trying to create an impact and also try to understand who's in the room and really listen. Because I think as I've progressed through my career, and even at this point, it has been a journey, right? You go through different phases, and just the more that you can listen and learn and be curious, because who's ever in the room, you're going to learn something from them. Whether it's something that you want to do and emulate, or whether it's something that you don't want to be like and you don't want to emulate, right? All these are learning experiences, and so it's a little. It's a little, I guess, repetitive, but how many of you watch The Bachelor, the television show? Just a show of hands. More than we have Phoenix natives, right? Okay, you guys are not admitting it. But literally, they make the joke about it being a journey, and frankly, that is so true of the career as well. You just have to know you never get to the end. You never know everything. You're never a complete expert. You can always learn something from your team and from your members. So that's just how I've applied it.
Yeah, and very similar for me. I also have always been in a male-dominated space, even though not in sports. I worked a majority of my career at USAA, which is a phenomenal organization. But as a leader, a woman leader, it was primarily men who were officers of the military. And so for me, I was likely a history maker there as well, being probably one of the youngest leaders, but also female. There in that space as well. But like Jay, I didn't really think of it that way, right? I didn't think of it like, oh, I'm a female and I shouldn't be here. I was in those spaces because that's where I was supposed to be, and I would show up like I was supposed to be there. But I also, I say this all the time, I also used to invite myself to things like, if I don't golf, but I know how to drive a golf cart, right? So I'm going too, right? So don't leave me out of the foursome, right? And so I feel like, I've always been in that space. Even from a sports perspective, ironic that I'm in sports now, but I'm a diehard sports fan, and the team would be talking football. I'm like, I'm the queen of football. I'm the commissioner of the fantasy club. What are we talking about here, right? And so again, you would have, like Jay said, you have to make sure that they understand your value, but not because you're female, but because you're just a valuable person and you should be in that space. So I always tell young girls, don't go in with the mindset of well, it's all guys, so I probably shouldn't be there. No, you should be there. It doesn't matter who's there, who's sitting to your right or to your left. Treat them as a teammate, and they'll do the same for you.
Wonderful.
And that was something that I figured out early on, and you said it. Use sports to connect with other people, right? You find that topic where you can connect and be relevant and make it authentic and organic.
Love that. So I'm going to ask a question a little bit off cuff here, because you guys have both. I'm asking for me. Hopefully it benefits you all as well.
Colin is shameless. I love that about you.
So I think everyone in the room, if we're being honest, at some point in our career, regardless if you are the head of a Fortune 500 or you have a small business or you're an employee in the middle, has suffered from imposter syndrome. And so I guess, what advice would you give? Because first, is that something you've experienced? I would assume the answer is yes. But what advice would you give for addressing that, particularly because it seems to be something that at different stages of your career, it's not a one-time, I've figured it out and it's gone. You know, you move into different circles, different environments, it tends to rear its head again. So, Latasha, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably everyone has a space of being in an imposter syndrome, but I choose not to live in that space. For me, there are plenty of moments, even right now today, I'm like, I didn't know anything about NASCAR, nothing when I started, but I immersed myself in that, right? I was on the road more than I was home. I'm just really getting to learn and understand the sport. And so I feel like we always have to give ourselves grace, right? You have to give yourself grace. The more negative you are, if you tell yourself you can't do it, you will not be able to do it. And so I feel like you have to be in this space of positive talk, all the things. Convince yourself that you are here and in that role, whatever that role is, for a reason. But you also have to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. I was so fortunate. The team that I have, that Julie was a previous track president there, that she created, is a phenomenal team. I learned so much every day from my team, and you have to be humble enough to know, like, hey, I am the one in this role, but I'm not going to be an imposter. I'm going to take the role and I'm taking it full on, but I'm going to surround myself by people who can help and make sure that I'm successful, and I'll make sure that they're successful in return.
Love that.
Me too. I mean, we definitely all have been there. And I think one of the things that sticks in my mind is my dad had 3 daughters, the poor guy. I mean, he was the biggest sports fan in the world. He took us to absolutely every sporting event under the sun. And, you know, we played, but none of us played at a high level at any point. But what he said to each one of us was, like, you can do whatever you want to do. You can be whatever you want to be. And kind of back in the day, that was a little groundbreaking, I'm going to be honest. And so that, sticks with me. And so when I have those moments of like, what am I doing here doing this? I can remember when we hosted Super Bowl in 2015, and I had the privilege of leading that team, Super Bowl 49. And it was my first try at a major event. I mean, again, I had no idea what I was doing. I never admitted that. And so when it was all said and done, it was incredibly successful. People were like, how'd you do it? I'm like, I have no idea. But seriously, it all came down to the team that you surround yourself with. And so those teammates, and one of mine is here today, Jen Barnett, who's run operations for the Super Bowl and for Final Four. Like, if I have a moment of like, what are we doing? Why are we here? You know, you go to one of your teammates and they remind you, here's what we're doing and here's why. So you always, I think, want to make sure you're surrounded with those great people, but you also have those relationships, you can have those conversations. Like, I could have that conversation with Latasha, and we've known each other about a year, but it's like we are on the same page in that way. Yep.
So Jay, I want to take a step deeper on what you just mentioned. Looking at effective leadership, which we talked about in the beginning, for those that are, I think the word empowering comes to mind. I know a little bit about both your teams, and I would say if I spoke to them with you out of the room, they would refer to you both as empowering leaders. Can you speak to what that might look like? And for those that, whether it's trying to help people promote within their company or draw something out, oftentimes leaders will talk about seeing more in a person than they saw in themselves at the time. I feel like I've had that happen to me. What does that look like for you, and what advice would you give to folks in the room?
Yeah, I think it's what you said. I mean, I definitely have had times in my career where I have had people, right, build me up and support and endorse me. And again, I was like, why me? Like, what do you see in me? So I think first ask those questions so that you can better understand how people view you. And then in terms of empowering your team, I mean, if you set a lofty goal, which is what we've done with these major events, like host, the best Final Four ever, pretty lofty. And then you surround yourself with superstars, then those superstars, you can count on them, you know that they're going to deliver, you know they're going to give it their all, and they're always going to go above and beyond. I mean, and so I think what I try to do is know that we're in this together, and almost like I'm the point guard, right? So I think back of my days of when I was at the Phoenix Suns, and I think about a player like Steve Nash. He was an amazing player. Who remembers Steve Nash? Thank you. Thank you. That makes me feel better. So, he was an amazing player and point guard, but what he did, he made his team better, right? He pulled out the best in every one of his teammates. And I think that's how I think about that leadership and, creating ownership and accountability, right? I mean, it's like, I'm going to hand over the reins to you, but you better deliver, and we're going to make sure that we've got those metrics and we're all measuring success the same way. So that's how I think about it.
Wonderful. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing I would add is, Jay mentioned this a little bit, but it's about the relationships that you build with your team, both in the office and outside of the office as well. I mean, when we're in sports, there is no 8 to 5, right? We are on all the time, especially for us with NASCAR, you have fans here for a whole week, and you're hosting people day and night, and so you're on, and so you need to make sure that your team, you need to know what makes them tick, what makes them keep going, right? Do they drink coffee? Do they drink tea? Right? Just the basic
Everybody
things.
drinks Starbucks.
Everyone.
Everyone.
Drinks Starbucks. Something from Starbucks, even if it's the ice water. For some reason, the water is good at Starbucks. I don't know why. But I also, one example that I give about my current team, if we're not having fun, our fans are not having fun, right? We're in the entertainment business, so we have to have a good time. I walk in during one of my first few weeks, and everybody's in the office, they're in suits, and there's this one of my best leaders that we have. I mean, she's like she's all stuffy. You know when people are just uncomfortable, right? And she's like trying to walk in her heels and all this stuff, and I'm like, girl, take the jacket off. And then she's like, okay, so she takes the jacket off, and she's still walking around crazy. I'm like, why don't you wear sneakers today? Like, if she's like, I can wear sneakers to work? Like, yes, of course you can. And so it's really about making sure that the person next to her will never not wear a suit to work, right? That's totally fine. And so it's really about making sure that you provide an opportunity for them to come as their true, authentic, whole self to work, and you create that culture as a leader. And so I would say that would be the only thing that I would add. Don't forget about your culture. Don't forget about the vibe. We walked in, we knew the vibe was good here. If I walk into work every day, I want the vibe to be good. Of course, every day is not a walk in the park, but the vibe there should be a consistent basis of a really good vibe and good culture.
Well, you stole part of my next question, which was going to be about the culture of innovation and growth. So I think that's a great start to that. Anything to add that you'd say needs to be included to cultivate maybe a culture of innovation?
Of innovation, I mean, the way we think about it, and it's possible because these events happen, right, there's a start and an end. And so the way we think about it along the way is around continuous improvement. Again, how can you be 1% or 10% better every day? And that was something I learned at the Suns and Mercury. You're always raising the bar, and I think you want your teammates to think about it in the same way, and then make 2 or 3 big bets. So for Super Bowl 57, we said, what do we want this to stand for? What do we want to do differently for Arizona? Right? It's a great event. It's going to be amazing, and a lot of people are going to come, et cetera. But ultimately for Arizona, what do we want to stand for? And one of those things was we want to be the greenest Super Bowl ever, which is a pretty lofty goal. And then we figured out how to do it. And then the second one was we want to make sure that we have a free fan event for Arizonans that they can't get anywhere else. And then we created Super Bowl Experience at Hans Park. So those were just a couple ways of we wanted to make sure it really worked for our local stakeholders. And that is always, just aspiring to do more, better, be first, be best, whatever it is. It's all about winning when you're in sports. How are we going to win?
It's true. What have you done for me lately?
Exactly.
So diversity and leadership conference, we've talked a little bit about the leadership style. I want to touch a little bit on diversity, which is a wide range. I think folks have a particular thought in their mind when they hear the word diversity. But for you guys that both have national and international reach with your events, how do you ensure that those events champion diversity? So whether that's folks of all abilities, age, gender, race, ethnicity, knowledge of the sport, if you will, what does that look like for you and within your teams?
Yeah, well, I think for NASCAR holistically, even for me, as I said in the beginning, I was like, I don't know about that opportunity, right? I had not gone to my first NASCAR race until 5 years ago, and I'm telling you, if you guys have not gone to a NASCAR race, I'm not selling, but I'm telling you, it is a phenomenal experience. You guys know someone. So if you want to go, let me know. But I'm just telling you that there's nothing like a NASCAR experience, right? The adrenaline, all of those things. But for me, born and raised here in Arizona, and my parents actually still live in the same house I was born and raised in, which is less than 20 minutes away from the track. As a black woman, as a black girl, like it wasn't anything that I thought was for me or for us. And so NASCAR has come a long way. NASCAR has had a Drive for Diversity program for over 20 years to try to get more drivers. We have one black driver that is at the highest level and one Latin driver, and that's it. And so no women. Everybody remembers Danica Patrick, so she no longer drives. And so, so we have opportunities there, but where I have the most impact is on our fan base. The last year and a half, I have been very, very focused on making sure that young kids, very unapologetic about it, black and brown kids have the opportunity to go to the Raceway at a very young age. I don't want them to be like me, where they didn't know what was possible. And so we've done that in the last year and a half, offering multiple programs, multiple field trip programs, STEM Day, everything you can think of. And then at the end of the day, we give them free tickets to come back to the Raceway because we know that we have to invest in them in order for them to know. And one of the field trips that we had, it was like towards the last day of school, is Water Day for the school at Estrella Vista. And one of the kids came up to me after and he said, I'm so glad I missed Water Day today. And I said, well, why? He was like, because I'm a diehard NASCAR fan now. And so it was just really cool to see a little sixth grader say that he was cool with missing Water Day. And so I'm glad that we are able to offer those types of opportunities for young kids and then as well for fans that would have never experienced NASCAR before.
That's big. I've got a sixth grader, and missing Water Day is a big deal.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what I would add to that is first, we're lucky that we're in Arizona. So we live in a really diverse place, right? It makes us interesting from a segmentation standpoint, from an age standpoint. Like we've got it all in Arizona. So I think that's a great starting place for all of us to think about it. And then for events like Super Bowl or Final Four, we want to make sure that programmatically we are programming in diverse and inclusive programs. And so one of the examples is we started with Super Bowl. It's called Business Connect, where it's basically diverse suppliers here in Arizona that we pulled together. We had about 200 businesses involved in it for Super Bowl, and it was minority-owned, women-owned, veteran-owned, LGBTQ+ owned businesses, and they got professional development, they got networking, and then potential contracts associated with Super Bowl. And so again, we just want to make sure we're really involving the community. That was kind of one. And then programmatically, our volunteer program is incredibly diverse. We had over 2,000 volunteers for Super Bowl, and we made sure basically that everyone felt welcome to be a volunteer. And those are the types of things I think we have to make sure are part of major events and business initiatives. And in a way, it's easy in Arizona, but we also know it's kind of where we started. It's never done. There's always more we can do, and so we have to keep striving and aspiring to really focus on that.
Thank you. You led perfectly into this next question. So this is an opportunity to brag a little bit, but on the back end of that, if you can tie in why it matters to the folks in the room and opportunities they have. And so I'm going to start economic impact and economic benefits between a lot of the major events in the Valley. You see I don't want to misquote, so I'm not going to say the statistics. I've heard it range. It's a lot of money in terms of the economic impact from the Super Bowl, from NASCAR, as well as Final Four. Can you speak a little bit to the economic impact, but then also why that matters to folks in the room? And you started to allude to some of it in terms of the opportunities. I know we had a designer that's in Tempe that was actually part of, was featured, indigenous designer that was featured during the Super Bowl. So I'll start with you, Jay, and come back to Latasha.
Sure. So I think first, we think about economic impact really broadly for these major events. And so there's 3 tent poles. The first one is it's a commercial for Arizona, right? When you're broadcasting an event to over 150 countries around the world, and they're seeing sunshine and happy people and a great event, we can't pay for that commercial. So first, it's really building the brand of Arizona, and we're very mindful about what we want that brand to be along the way. Second is actual dollars and cents. And so economic impact around tourism, restaurants, hotels, et cetera. We measure all of that. but we also are very intent on creating economic development around these major events. So bringing and introducing business leaders to what we have to offer in Arizona, and they aren't going to make a decision tomorrow to move their business here or to expand, but they will make that decision over the next 1, 2, 3 years, and we want to make sure we're in their decision set. So long-term economic development is a key part of this. And then the third tent pole is basically making sure that philanthropically we're giving back and we're making our community stronger. And there's so many ways that we do that. Latasha does that every day. And so just making sure that we've really got that lens. And for the major events, we look across Arizona and we do programs, of course, in the Valley, but we reach as far as we can to Tucson, to Flagstaff, over to Yuma. We did a reading program for the Final Four where we had thousands of third graders reading around the state, and then they got into a bracket style competition, and ultimately we crowned the winner the Friday before the Final Four. And they took up reading like nobody's business. And so that's one of the programs where we feel like it'll have a long tail on it.
Doing well by doing
good. Go on and on about this stuff, Colin. I love this.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, the only thing, a few things to add, like Jay said in the beginning, the most important thing is the collaboration that we all do. Like Jay said, we've been connected for the last 1.5 years that I've been in this role. Jay graciously took me right in the beginning, which it takes that, you know, for us to all collectively come together. We partner with multiple sports teams because we are doing a commercial, like Jay said, for the state of Arizona. So for NASCAR, we have 2 races at the track per year, one in March and then one in November. And the March race is always during spring training. So we have a partnership with the Cactus League. We're making sure that they move tickets. So our fans, again, as I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of them that come in the Monday before a race and leave the Monday after. It turns into a whole city out there where we have thousands of individuals who are enjoying our state of Arizona. They go all over the place, and we want to do everything that we can to be a resource for them. So we partner with the Arizona Office of Tourism as well to make sure that we know what's happening and what's going on in our community, and we can share that with our city that we've created in the city of Avondale. We also reinvested back into the community back in 2018. We did a couple $100 million renovation, so we have a brand new track, partnered locally with Oakland Construction, again, wanting to make sure that we give back to our community holistically. But most people don't know that we have almost 200 events at the Raceway per year. And so we have everything from concerts to the circus was just there not that long ago. I mean, you have Spartan races, you have a little of everything. We have 700 acres of land. And so we are, you know, a venue that is able to provide throughout the entire year. And as well, we have hosted Championship Weekend. This year, we celebrate 5 years of doing that. That is the Super Bowl of NASCAR. The season ends here in Arizona. And so that brings over 125 to 130,000 people here just for that weekend of racing. So again, there's just so many things that collectively we are doing. And like Jay said, at the foundation of all we do, it's giving back to the community is our top priority. We do that by partnering with nonprofit organizations, both large and small, organic, whoever they are, to be able to reinvest back into our market.
I appreciate you sharing that, and I think you guys should give a round of applause for that. There's a lot of always had a philosophy of lifting as we climb, and to the point you mentioned earlier of getting younger fans there that can potentially see themselves, whether it's on the track, working in the front office, working behind the scenes, same thing with the events that you guys are doing. So let's talk about success. How do you measure success? So I know in some ways, Super Bowl and Final Four, there's some common threads through there, but what does success look like? Is it just the financial bottom line? Is it impact? How do you measure that? I'll start with you, Jay.
Yeah. So it's both of those things. So financially, we want to make sure that we have consistent metrics for all of these events so that we can compare the Super Bowl to the Waste Management Open to the Cactus League. So we really have a holistic picture of what the sports business is in Arizona. And so for something like the Super Bowl, which is the mega event of mega events, the economic impact was measured at $1.3 billion.
That's with the B, for those that weren't sure.
I mean, it blows me away. And I didn't do the analysis either, just so you know. It was done by ASU, who does all of them, so they are consistent. And then we're waiting on the economic impact around the men's Final Four, but it'll be hundreds of millions of dollars. So that's one way. When we try to host these major events, it's very competitive. It's very competitive because now markets understand what these can do for us locally. And so whether it's LA we're up against, Las Vegas has come onto the scene. I mean, who wants to go to Vegas? Los Angeles, Vegas, Texas is a big competitor, Florida is a big competitor, you know, kind of picture like warm weather states. Anyway, it's competitive. And so one of our measures is we want to make sure that these event organizers and groups want to come back. So we had Super Bowl in 2015. The NFL was happy with it. They wanted to come back. They came back in 2023. Men's Final Four, we hosted for the first time in 2017. They were happy with it, so they came back in 2024. So it's always, you always want to make sure, right, you're staying on their dance card is one of the ways we measure it. But we look at so many things in terms of volunteerism and how many hours are volunteered. We look at impact from a nonprofit standpoint. How many kids did we impact? Because we know youth is so important to our future success in this state. So, I mean, the scorecard is really long in terms of how we look at the impact.
Same.
Same.
The reality is, it really is the same.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know, for us, you know, having NASCAR is our bread and butter, right? That's what we do. We all work for NASCAR, and so, you know, that's where we get most of our funding, or most of our money. That's where we make most of our money, is through our NASCAR races. But the reality is that yes, we have all of those things that we are measuring, but it's what we're doing outside of that. How do we continue to show up as a, you know, a competitive location for large concerts to want to come to Arizona? So I'm going to say it now. So all of my closest friends in the room, one day we will have like a mini Coachella at Phoenix Raceway. That's my goal. So we have the space and the land.
But we don't want it to be mini. We want it to be better than Coachella.
It will be definitely better than Coachella. It's at Phoenix Raceway. So it will definitely be better than Coachella. But, you know, it will be our own version of something like that. So really being able to be, you know, leading at the forefront. But again, as I mentioned earlier, it's about collaboration and making sure that people know that they are welcome to Phoenix Raceway and welcome to having large-scale events like that. And so yes, all of the things that Jay measures, we measure as well from an economic standpoint.
And as business leaders, I mean, we have to continue to invest in Arizona to make sure that we are ready to receive the opportunity, right? So whether it's the airport is so state-of-the-art and is doing an amazing job, whether it's our hotels, our restaurants, our businesses, like we have to be event ready at all time, and that requires continuous investment.
Yeah.
I love that point. I think for the chamber, we talk about attraction and retention. Cities generally do a really great job, or not so great, of attracting businesses, attracting opportunities. But in our world and in a lot of the work you guys do, the retention piece, the fact that there's been multiple Super Bowls in Arizona, the fact that championship is renewing each year speaks to the great work you're doing. So I want to shift gears a little bit and maybe ask you guys to be a little bit vulnerable here. So 2, 3, 4 amazing events, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say there were probably some lessons learned in terms of, okay, I'm going to start with you on that one. There's probably some lessons learned.
Hoping you start with Jay.
All right. Some lessons learned in terms of, wow, we won't do that again, or we should have done this earlier. And what I'm going to ask you to kind of think outside of the box is sharing that in a way that might be relatable, because obviously no one else in the room here is putting on events of quite the same magnitude, but within their own organization. So because of your request, Jay, you get to go first.
I'll go first. Always ready to go first.
Always.
You know, I think one of the lessons we've learned is use the time you have. And so, I mean, we all experience how fast time is flying by. And in the case of the Final Four, I mean, we had probably 12 or 13 months to plan it, which may sound like a lot to you, but it's not enough. And so using the time, and the second part of that is we worked closely with the NCAA. And many of us had not worked with the NCAA before, so it was an unknown entity, right? And we know they want it to be great, and we know we want it to be great, but how do we come together and just make sure we're on the same page? And I think probably looking back, like we didn't ask enough questions, right? We didn't create enough accountability, enough like dig deep. And so I think, and again, I take that on myself, just setting that tone for our leadership team. So I think really knowing what you're up against and just making sure, without being annoying, because that's always a balancing act, right? But be curious and just really dig deep and create as much accountability as you can in a really positive way, which it isn't always positive. I mean, it's definitely like, you know, you're bumping up against some people, whether you're working with NASCAR National or you're working with the NCAA. Like, everybody wants this to be great, but we have different agendas. And so just finding a really productive way to do that, and I think we could have been a little bit more proactive. Do you agree with that, Jen? Jen agrees. And it's a hard one. I mean, it's hard because it all comes down to the wire, and then it's like 2 weeks out, and you're like, crap, I wish we'd done that before. Wish we'd gotten that off the list.
Thank you.
Yeah, and for us, it's been, and so now I've had 3 races since I've been in this role, and for us, it's always the unknowns, right? Just the things that you're unprepared for. So last year, for championship weekend, the D-backs happened to go to the World Series at the same time as Race Week.
You didn't plan for that?
Definitely didn't plan for that, but I was definitely cheering them on, but that was not part of the process. So we didn't know that was gonna happen. Well, it's so funny because earlier in the year, D-backs are phenomenal partners. We done NASCAR night, our first ever NASCAR night at the D-backs. So we like to say it's because of us that, you know, they went to the World Series anyway. You know, because at the time we said, imagine if you guys were in the World Series, the timing would be the same. That would be a lot going on. So for things like that, you know, it happened, but it's those unknowns, right? And so that wasn't actually a bad thing. We were able to partner together, work together, each tell our stories. I didn't need to sell tickets at that time, or we were already sold out, but we really wanted to make sure we made the best of it as well for our partners at the D-backs, even though we had multiple community events going on the days that the games were here. So it's really just being prepared for the unknowns. This year, I'm fully prepared that the Cardinals will have a game on Championship Sunday. So I'm all over that one. Tailgate at the Raceway. So those are the types of things, right, that we that are hard for us, are hard to be, if you will, prepared for. Like Jay said, you know, we planned these. So when our March race ended this year, we were already planning for next March. Like, we were, in my mind, I'm not operating in the fact that I'm in June right now. I'm already in March of 2025, and sometimes I'm in November of 2025, because we know that championship will come back again that year as well. And so again, it's just being prepared for all of those unknowns and all of those obstacles that are going to come along the way, but transitioning them into being opportunities and not something negative.
Yeah, I think in terms of what makes that usable, what we're talking about, is just have your team prepared to pivot, right? And if you need to pivot, you're kind of ready for it. And if you don't, that's great. You know, you're just in really good shape. But always have that mindset, because something is going to come up.
Yep. So personal branding, and we're coming up on time, so I'm going to merge 2 questions together. But personal branding, you know, how you're perceived when you're not in the room, is something that a lot of leaders will speak to. So if we fast forward blank amount of years, I don't know what that time frame looks like for you, Latasha, what do you want your legacy, if you will, to be in Arizona, whether that's with NASCAR or just in general as a professional? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's so many things. First, I want to make sure that people know her shoe game was legit. That's the first thing.
I always say that.
Yeah, I got that down. No, just kidding. But I do want people to really be able to say, I mean, a lot of people give me a, if you will, they're like, oh my God, you're on so many boards, or you do all of these things. I really want people to know the impact that I brought on my community, the community that I was born and raised in. No matter what work I do as a job, the community first is the thing for me that I really want people to walk away with. Like, oh, she was part of Breakfast in the Classroom, or oh, she was part of this thing with the Boys and Girls Golf Club or United Way or whatever it is that you're part of, really being able to have that impact, but then she did something else for someone else. And so I don't care what president, what history I make, any of that kind of stuff. It's really the impact I have on the people around me. That's the legacy that I would like to leave, whether I've led them, whether I, helped, at a food bank, whatever it is, that's what I want people to really talk about.
Love it.
Me too. Ultimately, and I've been at this a while, it comes down to the people, which is exactly what Latasha said. And so whether you impacted like one person when I worked with them at Bank of America, 25 years ago, or one person from the Final Four that we worked with, it's all about the people. And what's great about sports is it casts a wide net, and it just has a way of bringing us together, right? It doesn't matter like what your politics are, it doesn't matter what your religion is, like sports brings us together and has the power to really, I think, kind of elevate our community and create good. And so that's what I love about being involved in sports, and kind of creating that greater impact is what gets me excited. And also just the impact that you have on people, right? Whether it's your family or it's your friends or it's your business associates or your broader community, that's what it comes down to.
Perfect. Well, as we're wrapping up, whether you are a hockey fan and you say it's Wayne Gretzky, or you're a basketball fan and you forgot about that and you say it's Michael Jordan, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So I'm going to put this on record. I've said it to you both individually. When you have your events and you just are like one person away from capacity, I'm your guy. So doesn't matter if I've got to sweep the courts or the field or
I've got a job for you.
All right.
Yeah. I've got a job
I'm
for
saying
you.
yes. I'll find out what it is later.
Yeah.
That's how you have the most fun.
I've done it before. So, but help me thank our wonderful panelists today.